Is it possible for us humans to unconditionally love? What do you think? The first important thing to consider is that we live in a conditional world. That's just the reality of the 3D matrix. If you're here, you're experiencing yourself relative to everything else that is. That means that you're always up against some conditions, the main one being the obvious, physical separation. It may be an illusion that everything is separate from you because from that higher dimensional angle and from the perspective of energy itself, everything is entangled. But your ego doesn't recognize that. And for a fixed identity, you're always clashing with the other. Everybody else has their own space, their own version of reality, and their own emotional state. So for you to even temporarily experience a feeling of oneness or unity with another being, which results in the feeling of love, you need to experience yourself through the creation of a new condition. You need to create a feeling of closeness, sameness, departing from your current conditional paradigm of being separate to include them as a part of your reality. Now, while that temporarily disables that feeling of separation, you're still experiencing conditions in the moment of achieving a loving connection. And that's one of those subconscious blind spots that most of us don't see. Whenever you're creating a relationship or a connection with somebody else, even if the purest intentions bring you to that place of wanting to bring them into your space of awareness, then what you're actually compelled to do is to find it in you to create that alliance. If you're choosing to love somebody or to connect with them on the deeper level, something is bringing you to foster that connection. It could be something as simple or as superficial as their appearance or shared interests, something that makes you choose to gravitate towards that other being. It can also be just the desire to experience closeness, which is a condition in and of itself. If you're choosing to connect with someone or something outside of you, you're choosing to move away from the feeling of internal disconnect. Maybe you want to add more connection to your life, or you want to experience a certain sensation of closeness, affection, or love that you can't experience on your own. This then means that you're choosing to bring yourself to a state of loving, to essentially move yourself away from the feeling that you don't want to be experiencing. We can even bring it to one of the most fundamental examples, which is the love of a mother to their child. Many would consider this to be the only case of unconditional love on planet Earth. Any mother with their child can experience such a pure, unconditional bond, or so it seems. Because even when the purest and most sincere love is available between a mother and her child, there too is a condition there. And that's the obvious. A mother to her child is going to love in a different way than she would with any other child. Because the mother's nurturing, her love and her caretaking toward her own creation is going to be entirely different than the way she feels toward any foreign being, even if it's an actual child. So there's always some condition involved. The reason why we pursue connections may even be to escape the conditions of our own presence. Very often we want to blend in with other people and with other connections to avoid feeling the conditionality that we've created for ourselves. This is why certain empaths and individuals with a big heart and with very loving intentions need to associate with other people, because the conditional state within their own subconscious mind is actually very taxing. You can have an empath that's capable of loving somebody else so deeply, experience self-loathing or even self-hatred, because if they're unable to love themselves, or if they feel like they're unworthy of giving themselves the same attention and affection they can provide somebody else, they're going to feel repelled by their own presence, or they're simply going to feel unsatisfied until they give love to somebody else. This commonly plays out among people pleasers, or people that feel a need to create those conditional connections to other people to feel a sense of love within themselves. Some people only experience self-love if they're giving, which is essentially an act of self-sacrifice, or choosing to dedicate your own vital life force to another because you feel you're only lovable if you are giving of your love to others. Now, this obviously is a highly conditional and transactional way of showing energetic exchange. And it results from experiencing the same reciprocal exchange in early childhood. All people pleasers and empaths with a tendency to give in order to receive felt a lack of that love, or a very conditional kind of treatment toward themselves as they were growing up. If you felt like you must be conditionally loved by other people because of something that you were able to do or give to them, you're going to end up feeling like love is conditional, and that you are only lovable if you either do a certain thing or show up in a certain manner that you believe will make you worthy of receiving that love in return. As soon as somebody has this conditional version of love implanted in their mind, they're going to feel like they need to do very specific things in order to be worthy of that love. They're going to either be on the look for people with certain qualities that they can love to fill their own inner void, or they're going to even attract narcissistic relationships or different situations in which they end up feeling abused and needing to give more love than they are receiving because they believe that is the adequate response to the conditionality they have once received themselves. Conditional love often replays itself on this never-ending feedback loop of conditionality, because once you've been conditioned to believe love is something conditional, you end up treating yourself just as conditionally. The reason why you can't break out of that loophole is not because love is something primarily conditional in the universe. It's because the way that you associate it is through unhealthy attachments, because you don't feel that you can be loved authentically for yourself at the baseline level of your soul, or you feel that love needs to be earned or given and received in a transactional way based on what you do that makes you then worthy of receiving it in return. As soon as you start treating love as something transactional, it's going to become a conditional factor in your life, and you're going to feel like you either are not worthy of simply having it for your sheer existence, or you're going to feel like you need to be working for love, doing things that build you up in an attempt to get closer to the ideal version of yourself that is then worth loving. This is why so many people that conditionally love themselves are constantly looking to self-improve, improve their appearance, their physique, choose to work more, work harder, or conditionally love themselves to the point of actually depriving themselves of loving experiences altogether because they don't believe that they can be loved if they are just themselves. This is the classic definition of a narcissist, somebody that is so absent of the condition of self-love that they need to be externalizing love in every possible way, choosing to look for new ways to amplify their worth through what they do, they create, or they give in the form of validation or different conditional treatment to those around them in order to attain that kind of reciprocity that they're really lacking within themselves. The deeper question is, are we actually able to love unconditionally, or is every single human being with some conditional impression of what it means to be human and to be able to hold space for love, attaching conditions to love, which renders it a conditional entity? If all of us are associating with love in different ways based on how we have been taught how to love, then we all have a certain version of what love is in our minds, which is entirely subjective in nature. Nobody experiences love in exactly the same way, which is fascinating to consider. For some people, love is something that is amply available. They can love by simply going into nature, connecting to an animal, or to a loved one in a very pure and innocent manner. But to other people, love is something that needs to be worked for because fear was implanted in their minds relative to the reception of that love. Some people feel that they are loved when they are actually being abused and neglected, because when they receive even a small hit of dopamine or oxytocin as a result of feeling approved of after being neglected, they consider that that is love, when in reality they're being conditioned to experience love in the most transactional way possible. Here's another perspective of what unconditional love may be. In the context of a relationship, we can contact unconditional love if we first and foremost are accepting of the fact that some conditions exist in the perspective of every human identity. You're attracting a partner because of certain things that you favor about them. This is obvious if you're a perceptive human with all your 5 senses in place. You're going to be enjoying the presence of somebody through how they look, how they feel, how they smell, how you're able to contact their energy. And all of these are subtle conditional factors that you take into account to decide whether you are attracted to this individual or not. Attraction is a highly conditional process in which you're assessing based on the conditions you feel in that person's field, whether they are a match to your conditions or not. However, attraction need not be something malignant or dangerous to factor into your life. Everybody is attracting based on their own conditions, based on who they are, what they feel deserving of, what they feel they are able to be in touch with, based on what they've been conditioned to believe they are worth, and also what they believe they need in order to achieve that deeper connection. Attraction is also something we cannot consciously devise. Very often we're attracted to things and energy that we don't even necessarily believe we need to be attracted to. It is something intrinsic to us, and it's an enigma of simply being an energetic being that's able to feel on a deeper level. And so when you experience that kind of attraction to somebody, the more that you zoom into the reason why you're attracted to that individual, the more unconditionally you can begin to feel about them. Because there's something beyond just conditional attachment and fixation, which is simply the state of being infatuated. If you're drawn to somebody just for their looks, just for their energy, just for something that you're able to experience in their presence, be it their status, their money, their connections, or something else superficial, you won't experience that next level or that higher dimension of connection, which is where unconditionality really comes into play. Conditionality can only get you so far in the connection with somebody. It might bring you to a feeling of lust or desired energetic exchange, where you're able to meet each other's superficial needs, but only at that level of physical, mental, or superficial emotional interaction. When we're talking about spiritual connection, or love at the level of where the heart and soul can really unite, you can't get there with just conditional infatuation. The only way to experience the deeper soul tie between two individuals is when you allow unconditional love to reign supreme in your life. When you're able to see beyond physical conditions, even different extraneous factors, which might be physical distance, age difference, cultural differences, or different things that might come in the way of love in the traditional sense, which don't defy love in the unconditional manner. Unconditional love is what continues to exist even when conditions are present. It's when the undying attraction between two people is so powerful that they're willing to go through conditions together in order to prove their love wins in the end. Unconditional love is this undying flame which is always present when two people are willing to sacrifice their own egos on the altar of unconditional love. Unconditional love is choosing to believe in love even when different extraneous factors attempt to extinguish love in your eyes. It's choosing to be so resolute with your intention to keep love alive that you continue to embody it with every aspect of your experience. You choose to mentally believe in love and to define love through everything that you are thinking and believing. It's to emotionally uphold the value of love by choosing to bring yourself into loving connection with yourself, with reality, through compassion, kindness, empathy, and the real ideal of love that can only live on in somebody that's choosing to feel and to deeply be sensitive to the entire life experience. It's choosing to physically be in touch with love, but choosing to hold space for all parts of you and for other people. Because love is something tangible. It's something that can't be verbally expressed, but that can always be felt. So if you choose to physically give yourself the feeling of love, you're choosing to allow that love to transpire into every other part of your experience. You're choosing to physically connect, to integrate, to also allow yourself to sustain balance by choosing to bring everything in your field into balance with that active awareness of what is loving toward yourself and what isn't, and choosing to move toward the end of the spectrum in which you are constantly fostering balance by choosing to create that balance in all parts of you. Unconditional love is also choosing to recognize that there is a part of the experience and a part of the cosmic soul that is accessible when you are willing to put yourself in the faculty of your awareness, where you stop asking yourself the question, is love real? What is love? Can I experience it? And you choose to just submerge yourself in that unconditional state of beingness, where you begin to access it immediately. whatever it takes for you to submerge yourself in that etheric space in which you're quite literally dancing with reality and through reality, through the energized state of being fully entangled with what is, to allow yourself to feel that feeling of oneness. And then no questions are left. You realize unconditionality is found in your ability to let go of conditions, even temporarily, and go into that state of being in which you know there is nothing stopping you from being love. Unconditionality is realizing the conditions were the illusions all along, and that your mind is full of them, and your physical being might be saturated by illusions internalized from the world all around you. But if you choose to keep love alive, you can choose to keep that glimpse of God or source consciousness in your field at all times as a meaningful contrast to what isn't aligned with source. What that frequency of source feels like is unconditional love. It's a state in which all things are connected and all things are powerfully interwoven in that higher dimensional place of realization that the lower level shadows and illusions had to be created so that we learn how to drop the conditions and return to the soulful state of love. Unconditional love is something that reflects the primordial state of being, but it's also the state we are all meant to return to. And so we have to create conditions to learn how to relieve ourselves of them. Sometimes we have to learn through conditional love to understand where we've been hijacking our ability to be unconditional with ourselves and others, to learn to forgive, to release pain, to stop wounding ourselves and our own souls by choosing to maintain resistance toward that beautiful state of unconditional love, by realizing most people are not capable of unconditionally loving because they weren't taught how to love. They did not see it as an example, and our world today is definitely not providing us ample opportunities to see that unconditional love is even possible. But that should not stop us from trying to be unconditional bearers of that flame of love. We can carry the torch by keeping love alive in our hearts. That begins by just choosing to give ourselves the loving frequency and the invitation to be more loving. In order to sustain love, we need to first understand how we have been conditionally keeping ourselves away from that pure, unadulterated state of being in which we are love, and we're free to love because we let ourselves drift in the direction of that which makes us feel most alive, on the wings of that beautiful frequency of oneness. So if you don't believe in unconditional love, I would challenge you to think about why you feel you need conditions to experience love, because there's a paradox that lies within that very notion. If you think love is something conditional, you're associating something that is by nature unconditional, etheric, boundless, universal, as something that is boxed up, something that is limited. And those two things cannot actually be conjoined. If you're experiencing love as something conditional, you're trying to fit into a mold of what it isn't. You're choosing to confine love to a standard of what it is not. You're choosing to retain a mental focus of what love should be because you have not recognized the unconditional presence you can be in to see love from a higher lens of awareness. And so if you doubt that love can be unconditional, look at your own conditioning and see where the connection between your conditional background, programming, and upbringing has created that impression that love is primarily conditional in nature. You can choose to access unconditionality by freeing yourself from certain mental limitations and choosing to see love as something that's actually inherent to your being. It's something you know how to feel, but perhaps you don't feel safe feeling, or you don't want to enable yourself to experience because it will change literally everything else in your life journey. Unconditional love is deeply triggering and destabilizing to the ego that doesn't want to believe in its presence. And that reveals that we need to love most the part of us that doesn't believe in unconditional love altogether. You must learn to give yourself unconditional acceptance and allowing to experience love on a level that is beyond what you even believe you're deserving of. You need to become deserving of unconditionality to even believe that that kind of love exists. And so sit with the feeling of what you think unconditional love is to unlock the deeper dimension of love in your heart so that you can connect to source within yourself and connect to that fractal of source within everyone and everything else in existence. That is when you will realize that unconditional love was always present, but perhaps it was too triggering to realize that essential form that it always exists in.